Thanks for tuning in to another show in the Next Reel family of film podcasts.
Want to skip those ads and get early access?
Become a member at truestory.fm/join and discover all the other great perks that come with it.
Welcome to the Film Board. I'm Pete Wright. Each month we take one new release and put it on the table to figure out what it's doing, what it's responding to, and whether it earns its place in the larger conversation about movies. This is a spoiler-filled discussion, opinionated, sometimes argumentative, but it's grounded in the idea that movies don't exist in isolation. They're part of a long, ongoing dialogue. If you're here because this film got under your skin, you're in the right place. For 3,000 years, the deal has been the same. A man goes to war, the war ends, and eventually, battered, salted, half his crew fed to a Cyclops, the man goes home. That is the promise of the oldest adventure story we have. You leave, you suffer, you return. The bard sings, the dog dies happy. Roll credits on Western literature. With Christopher Nolan's entry into the Homerverse, the war is over. The gods may not be real. Athena has Zendaya's face and a much darker job than goddess of wisdom. The suitors have a genuinely terrible afternoon, and somewhere in the back of a warmly lit room, a man who spent a decade getting home is looking at the sea again, because the sea, as it turns out, is the only thing that ever told him the truth. Tommy Metz III, Ocean Murff, and Steve Sarmento are here, so pull up an oar, mind the whirlpool, and row. Okay, we have the Homeric cinematic universe. Ocean, Tommy, Steve, hello, and welcome to the Odyssey.
Thank you so much, Pete.
Oh, this is very exciting. Or shall I open that as a question? Is this very exciting? Let us begin with our standard fare. Opening thoughts. I look at you three and I know who's not the pure classicist of the group, because Ocean is on the record as never wanting to see a movie before 1975. This is a movie that exists after 1975, but it's about something far older. Ocean, would you kick off our opening thoughts, please?
First off, I don't watch movies that are made after 1970.
70.
Sorry,
before
1970. If they're made before 1970, I'm out.
After 1970, you don't watch.
Yes, exactly.
I just watch Train Coming at Camera.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, I'm a big Charlie Chaplin fan. Isn't that here what we're talking about?
Huge.
All right. So my opening thoughts. This is a great sequel. I loved the part one Troy, and so I think that the going into this, I was really excited about it. It looked amazing. It looked great. Having seen it and everything, I have really almost nothing but positive things to say about it. There are certain things about not only the movie but some of the casting choices that I think are interesting in terms of not only the backlash about them, but then even some of the decisions made there, which I'm sure we'll get to. But overall, my overall impression of the movie is I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great story. I really liked how they the moral implication of what the Trojan Horse meant in this movie versus it just being a device of destruction. I thought that was great, and I really enjoyed it also because I hadn't read the Odyssey, so I didn't. I knew about the Cyclops, but other than that, I just knew about the Cyclops. I knew it took him a long time to get home. Other than that, I was going in with I don't know what's going to happen. So this was great for me.
Outstanding. Starting off on the right foot. All right, Tom, you as a noted fan of bravura filmmaking, how did you land on the Odyssey?
I thought this movie was extraordinary. I had an absolutely outstanding time. And this is the type of movie that it's very rare when this happens, when you feel its length, but you don't mind its length. It feels appropriately long. You feel like you've gone on an Odyssey because you feel battered and broken by this movie. And then, like Ocean already sort of hinted at, to have this zillion-year-old story and then to have a way to connect it to even today's politics, to today's world, is just incredible. And it's the kind of like chef's kiss at the end that makes Christopher Nolan just really an incredible filmmaker. I thought it was extraordinary.
All right, Steve, You're the classicist. In case you didn't know, if you look around the room and don't know who probably has Homer memorized, it's you.
Not memorized. No, I did, as a high school English teacher, did drag freshmen through the Odyssey, and what I really enjoyed about this was it played the hits, which anybody that had to endure it in school, all the monsters, all those things, but Nolan really is both Ocean and Tommy said, really made this an update for a contemporary audience and focused on themes. And I just had a tremendous time, really enjoyed this. I think I'm probably the only person that saw it in the Nolan approved format because I am fortunate enough to be in a city with one of the IMAX 70mm with whatever number of perforations, all that. And it was a visual spectacle. It was so immersive. It's truly a just overwhelming, epic experience. See this on the biggest screen you can for a big story, big performances. Yeah, I loved this.
Okay. All right. This feels maybe like a home run. I enjoyed my time with the movie. This is an interesting. It's an interesting place for me. It's one of those movies that I was looking forward to seeing the film because I'm a fan of Christopher Nolan and I'm so in the bag for other films in Nolan's catalog. And I love the way he makes films. I love the technology that he continues to push forward. He's sort of James Cameron-esque in the way he is so inventive around the technology and the way he just beats IMAX with a thrashing stick to invent new stuff to make the movies he wants to make. This movie is another in the sort of incredible lineage of new cameras, new technologies to get this thing made. And to shoot the entire thing in IMAX, I think gives us an opportunity to see performance detail that we haven't been able to see before. I just like their faces this big. It's extraordinary. I did not go into it really looking forward to the story of the Odyssey. I was kind of take it or leave it. I want to see it because I think it's going to be a great parade of pixels and light. And the longer I get from my experience with the movie, the more I kind of like the story. Like I'm really into it. It had some really huge set pieces. I think you guys are right on, like the way it becomes a sort of analog for our modern universe and the way it updates the quintessential stereotypical hero and mentor. I think those they became tropes because of Homer, right? Like this is the movie that created those words, and I think that he was able to make it non-dumb. Like come on, the Trojan Horse could have been really dumb, and he made it terrifying and fantastic. And we're going to talk about all of that. Let's start with just when you think about these major themes that are at work in this thing, what sticks out to you as quintessentially Nolan-esque? The themes that are coming through that he has decided to modernize. He's kind of playing the Nolan hits here, coming off of Dunkirk and Oppenheimer, and using these ancient idols as a way to speak to modern audiences.
It really feels like a companion piece to Oppenheimer, to re-examining what is legacy, what is shame, what is hubris, and sort of slicing through the mythos that we have for those things and showing how flawed everything can be, how there can be sort of a rotten core in the middle of all of these supposed heroics or incredible advancements of science or warfare, whatever it is. It seems like it's a re-examination because there were so many parts where you brought up the Trojan Horse just to start. I mean, I never thought about it that way, about what it was like to be in the horse. I kind of thought that they brought folding chairs. I don't know what I thought it was, but it never occurred to me how dangerous and scary and gross it was to be trapped in there. And then we don't want to get to the end yet, but then what the Trojan Horse ends up ultimately becoming, because it's always been a hero's journey. the way that I've always read it, the way that I was always taught it, is the bad guys were inside the castle, and so the good guys tricked them, and hooray, won, and all is right with the world, and then they get to go home. And that's not the story that Christopher Nolan's interested in telling, and I'm glad for it.
I guess, and maybe this is my part of my ignorance of by how I came at this. I've always viewed the Trojans as the good guys. I thought the Odyssey and everything was a story of the bad guys winning. Is it not?
Right.
Like, so the people in the horse, so the Trojans were the good guys, and they were defending, honor and civilization and all of that, and the Greeks were coming in trying to just conquer and destroy everything, and then that they were the bad guys, and this is a story about the bad guys winning. So I've never, and you can let me know if this is just my ignorance of the whole thing. I've always thought of, whenever I heard the Trojan War and everything, I've always thought of the Trojans as the good guys and the Greeks as the bad guys. Is that not how it's supposed to be read?
Well, it depends on, you get into all the mythology, because I mean, about Helen of Troy, whether she's abducted and all that, because they're going to basically get Menelaus's wife back, who's been kidnapped. So basically there's that. And again, with all of these mythologies, whether you're reading the story in the Odyssey or if you read Virgil's The Aeneid, which is more from the Trojan perspective, it's like comic books. You get so many different versions based on who's telling the story, when it's being told. There's some sort of those core moments, but there's always a little bit of a cultural spin on characters, motivations, all of that. So no, I can see where that comes from.
It's like in Vietnam, they call it the American War.
Right.
They don't call it the Vietnam War. That's what we call it.
Yeah, but I guess part of it too is this, even if we were relating it to comic books, and how, because I did a lot of looking up things and researching about like what happens with these stories, and then I did love Troy, and so I did a lot then. But in it, it also keeps that comic book trope of like the Greeks are really cool characters, and so the bad guys are typically cool, and the good guys are just trying to just defend what they're doing, right? And so so I've always viewed it as that they were that they basically, and also because they came in to destroy. Because the one thing about it was that they didn't come to conquer Troy; they came to just burn it to the ground, right? And it never made sense to me why they didn't stay and rule it, because it's still a valuable port. Helen was the impetus to try to then Agamemnon could come and get more power and control the Aegean Sea, but they didn't stay. They destroy this place and then go home. Whereas instead of thinking it as an actual continuation of territory and an expansion of power, it was really just a form of total destruction. And I think that the theme that I liked in the movie, bringing it back to the movie, the theme that I liked about his journey in it was that he didn't want to go home. And I think that while there are some things that were said more out loud, I think part of why he didn't want to go home is this is my thought. I thought he didn't want to go home because he recognized that they went over there under a false pretense and did an unjust thing and didn't destroy the people for no real gain or purpose, and then just went back home. And that he was like, how do I go home and face people when I not only defied the law of Zeus and the will of the gods by using a gift as a way to do this, but what I did really did not serve any greater purpose. It was only for the purposes of destruction. And so the part of the Odyssey to me was him trying to come to grips with understanding, or trying to just deal with the fact that he was the architect of such a massive scale of destruction of a people.
And that's Nolan's bringing a lot of that text to this movie that is not as prevalent or as discussed in the original text. You don't have that. It's more of it's a heroic song. It is a poem told about heroes winning a war and coming home. I mean, that's what it is. So you are right in what you found, but that's Nolan more so. And by bringing in the real historic, the people of the sea, that whole element, bringing that into the story is also a way of forwarding that kind of idea.
Yeah, I think the other thing that Nolan really brings is we don't get really, it's mythology, right? But we don't have the gods really. We don't see the puppet masters. We don't see all of that. This isn't Clash of the Titans. This isn't that. And that makes sense, for a contemporary audience if we're going to take a more psychological approach, because we're in a different era where people understand psychology, whereas back when Homer was writing, people thought their conscience, their voice, that was the god speaking to them. We're well beyond that. So to have a more reflective hero makes sense. And his whole description of the siren song was just the most amazing thing ever. Because I thought, okay, how are you going to portray the song? Well, the best thing is you hide it. You don't let the audience hear it, but you let him describe it in an amazing way that gives us so much insight into what he's going through. That whole, do I want to go home? Do I not want to go home? Looking for the thing that's lost, which is the thing that I actually had. All of that, I think, is what is Nolan's stamp on this, is to really make it that type of piece, as Tommy said, really that follow up to Oppenheimer on a hero and regret, tragedy, and what have I unleashed upon the world by what I have done.
Yeah, I think the setup is really is actually very sweet and diabolical. The fact that we get him as the noble hunter, right? He doesn't hunt without letting the prey know that he's there, because that's the only way that it's fair, right? So he always plucks the bow. I really like the way he does that. And then when he is confronted with this war, being a part of and a soldier and a commander in a war that is based only on vengeance, retribution, rage, ego, that conflict in him, I think, is and I hats off to Matt Damon. I think he plays that conflict really well on screen, in his face, in his body, in his relationship with Calypso, trying to figure out, to your question, Ocean, like trying to figure out, when does he want to go home? When does he just use the words, I want to go home because I have a home, versus I want to go home because apparently I should want to go home, even though I'm terrified of myself and who I've become. And leading to the end of the movie, and we don't have to talk specifics about this sequence yet, but leading to the end of the movie, what have I become? I've become someone who can exert great wrath on others through extraordinary violence, and hopefully still be a guy that you can look at and say he did the right thing, maybe. Right. That sort of, we see what happens in the story, but we never really get to see why, because I think Nolan rightly lets us interpret that. It ends up being sort of a beautiful circle. And I just want to note the bard. I have never considered this, but the role of the bard is essentially fake news, right? The bard's just hearing rumors and singing it. The bard doesn't know any of what's going on. And I love the way this is portrayed, that we have this bard with the suitors who's doing his thing while we're seeing the story play out in a much richer tapestry elsewhere, through flashback, through contemporary retelling. And I think this idea of this bard singing that kind of carnage into legend is sort of the point, right? It's sort of the point of our relationship with news right now and how broken it is. And I kind of low-key love that Nolan included this angle.
Well, yeah, but then that makes it where like the rest of us are not as educated, because what is it? He says that the bard's purpose is the singing it is the only way you can tell stories for people that can't read.
Yeah. Right.
So
right.
Yeah.
Right, because we're about the Bronze Age is not, because potentially he broke the world by breaking Zeus's law, and language disappears into the dark.
And all we have left is singing Facebook.
All we have are TikToks.
That's right.
To remember what the world was like.
Isn't that what it's going to be when we run across the beach and see the Statue of Liberty's head in the sand? It's just we'll learn about it first on TikTok. You were doing great. Okay, let's talk about just run through some of the big moments. This is the Fake Things on Fake Things, Tommy Metz III Memorial Fake Things on Fake Things segment, because we've got some extraordinary composited sequences, visual effects sequences. First of all, how brilliant is it to turn the eyeball sideways or up, right side up?
Just to make it alien enough and to make it not goofy. That's all it needed to make it not goofy.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
So we have a real cave. We have real bees. We have a 60-foot Cyclops rig with the full animatronics, puppetry. We've got 40 sheep. We've got Bill Irwin as the Cyclops. And it's all thrown together on a backdrop of real places, real seas. And I know there is digital wizardry in here. And I never once stopped to think how many computers did they use? I was very invested in the look and feel of these sequences. Did anything jump out at you as, overtly created?
No, I think for me, the one that could have felt the most like it was when they skate past the whirlpool and they go through that little alley and all of the tentacles start coming down. But it works perfectly because he knows he does the opposite of what later Peter Jackson does, where Peter Jackson clears the frame so you can just see everything and he has an eagle fly around it. It's constantly bisected with mast or with water splashing. It's really hard to really get a good look at it, which makes it even scarier. And when you're shooting tentacles in broad daylight and none of it's real, that's where things are going to fall apart. But he knows how to obscure it just enough with real things to make it sort of feel like a part of the real world, which is brilliant. It's really, really well done. It's restraint. It's like, I have the keys to the kingdom, but I'm only going to show you half of it. And that's what makes it work.
Yeah, I find that for me, while I definitely look out for fake things, fighting fake things, because of Tommy. Which, I mean, honestly, we should have this be like some Tommy rule or something. We got to come up with a name for this. But anyway, that in this movie, I really found that, like, and that's kind of why I was struggling with the original question, was that while you had fake things like with the Cyclops or the giants or the whatever that tentacle octopus thing was, it was great how you didn't know what it was, but that they're always engaging with another character or a human being. So it's like a fake thing versus a real thing at all times. And that you don't have like Cyclops fighting the giants, or like, you don't have a scene where where everything is just, okay, this is all CGI. None of this is real. It is always just like this real human characters are then interacting with this fantastic thing. Like kind of like with the giants, where when they interacted with them, I found myself sitting there thinking, I don't know. I think maybe there's a way they could win, but they just ran, and then ran and died. But then it is still fake things with the practicality of the ships and the trope to how to kill them and all that. So I thought the effects, partly because of that, felt very seamless to me. That it was always, you're grounded in the human characters that are in the scene, and that they're interacting with this fantastic thing or beast or person or whatever.
Well, yeah, he always found the right location or the right environment for everything. So when it's fighting the Lestrygonians, the giants in the big plate armor, the way the trees move around to like imprison, and there's other times the camera's moving. I'm like, is he just using parallax to make it look like these trees up front are moving, or is that? But there's unnatural movement going on, but the camera's moving. There's so much going on. And he's just using the environment, or the trip to Hades on that black beach or wherever they are. Of like, it's not put him on a big blue screen, set and just create whatever you want. It's, let's find the most desolate place on Earth and use that.
And really bury the actors, and they had snorkels and a safety person with all of them. I mean, the practicality is thrilling.
Absolutely, especially when you're going to magnify, when you're shooting on such high resolution format film, it's going to catch every detail to the point where I can tell that Charlize Theron has 3 ear piercings on her left earlobe, because the detail is so fine in the image that you can't tamper with things. So you're going to do as much in-screen, in-frame stuff as you can, and it all looked good. I couldn't tell with the Cyclops, is that an animatronic arm? How are they compositing shots together? Right. How are they doing all of that? And I didn't care, because I was never taken out of the moment, because everything felt true to the situation they were in.
It was really seamless. Hats off to Digital Negative, DNEG, doing the effects work with the, clearly in partnership with everything going on in camera. Let's turn our attention then to Telemachus and Penelope. This is where we're in a space of no, appreciable giant monsters or visual effects. This is the court of the suitors, and Penelope and her weaving, and Anne Hathaway and Tom Holland just doing their thing, trying to get along with all these brutes in their throne room. From the perspective of they sort of ground the story in their reality. How badly did you want Robert Pattinson to just shut up and win already? Was anybody in the bag for the evildoer?
What? No, he was so horrible.
Yeah,
he played the worst person so well. He was great. I thought all of those sequences were wonderful. And I thought Tom Holland did a really nice restrained job. I think Anne Hathaway is always amazing, and Robert Pattinson was perfect. I mean, when he's just like, the shields, get the shields, no, get the daggers. I was just like, oh, you're the worst. But he was also believable. Like, I liked his scene with Penelope a lot. You could see her maybe being like, all of these guys are a bunch of pigs, and we'll talk about pigs later, but he's like the least piggish of them. And so even though he's the worst, I thought it was outstanding. I loved it.
Yeah, he was very charming.
Very charming. And I think that was the thing that struck me. Like, there is actually a lot of the movie where I'm like, he really is the best of the lot, and maybe she should just give him a chance. But over the course of 3 hours, he gets so believably progressively worse that you really, he needs to, you buy that he needs to be on his way by the end of the movie. You buy that he needs to be taken out with an arrow in the neck.
I think putting the dog on the dung pile
that was it.
Maybe push the needle a little bit.
Yeah.
I think they needed that scene so that you would have him be universally hated, because up until that point, I think he's 50-50. Depending upon if you like him, don't like him, whatever. But once he puts the dog on the dung heap, you're like, okay, well, now you can kill him.
Yep.
So but outside of that, I think that in the grounded story, and this is the thing that I found interesting was, why was like Telemachus. Okay, yeah. Like, so we're spending all this time with him learning how to fight and becoming a better fighter and getting this training from the one loyal, Odysseus's last loyal Emmaus, the last loyal servant Emmaus, right? And then throughout this entire movie, he is the worst fighter in like, apparently in the kingdom. Like it's like everybody can beat him up, and so I'm trying to understand then, like, why. Because part of this, the subplot of the whole thing is we know that there's the overarching plot of Odysseus coming back, and then Penelope is maintaining her love for her man. But there's supposed to be part of this where it should be the rise of Temecula, right? The rise of Tom Holland, and that should happen. That because he's going to ascend and become the ruler of Sparta, not Sparta, Ithaca. But he seems to be just as, while not as in a sense cowardly as Antonius, which was Robert Pattinson doing an amazing job, but he's ineffective. Like he does not elicit a loyalty. He's not a good leader. He's not a good fighter. He's just kind of like, you just basically, because these are your parents, you get this, but there's nothing else about you that seems to merit it.
He's a nepo baby.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's that's the whole point, is you've got Odysseus, a man from a different era. You've got these guys that are, battle weary, battle hardened. You've got these suitors that have just been sitting around for the past however many years, just eating, getting fat off of, the food and drink, all of that, and have no skills, have no ability to lead any of that. And I think that why Telemachus cannot step into that is the dynamics of the story. It puts Penelope in a really unique position of, I know what it takes to be a good leader. Nobody here qualifies for this. Not even my son can be the man that I need him to be. And I think that's one of the great things that Anne Hathaway brings to this performance, is the complexity of the decisions that she is facing. Of, the country is falling apart. The kingdom is falling apart without a king. We need a king. There is nobody here to do this. Everybody's looking to me. I have the power to do something about this, and I need my king back. And to me, that dynamic is necessary to create that moment in the end when Odysseus does return, to show not only his son and these suitors, what it takes, but also, that it's not something to to look forward to take on that mantle of leadership, because it is a brutal position to hold.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I think that it's an interesting thing to both of your points. This idea that the kind of I'll say suffering that it takes to become the man that Odysseus is was not available for Telemachus, right? Like, he was raised in a way that Odysseus was not. And that means that there is this sort of generation, like leadership skips a generation maybe, or you have to go, even further for the youth of royalty to make them hardened leaders. And is it even worth it to do that? Like, this is sort of the story of generational wealth that is inherited by the youth. Like, you're just going to be king, but you're never going to live up to your father's shoes, because he had to become the leader he is because of some different horrifying things in his upbringing. And I like that.
Well, it's a step. I mean, also, though, he is in many ways the heart of the movie. I mean, what his strengths are is loyalty, is being able to see through, is not wanting a power grab or a money just for power grab or money. He wants to try to save his father's legacy. He wants to do right by his mother. I mean, there's a lot of goodness in him.
Even when he approaches his mother and says, here's a plan, you're not going to love it, it's not because it came from a place of greed. It's not like he didn't think things through, right? He made a case.
Just when we talk about Nepo babies, I don't want to make it sound like he's like one of the cast of Succession. He has within him the possibility of being a great, fair, just
and
leader.
That's all I want to echo, is that he has the potential to be that, but not the opportunity to learn it the way his father did. Yeah,
sure. But maybe that's good. I mean, his father learned it and broke the world.
Yeah.
Is what I mean. He says I broke the world, and then enough time will go by and everyone will forget our mistakes. It's how this goes. He's also, remember, not allowed to fight. He's not allowed to fight and take on the suitors. They want him to fight because he's younger, he's weaker, he's not as battle heavy, and then they can either strike him or he'll be put into exile. And the idea of being put into exile in this time, because we didn't have GPS, it was a death sentence. Like, being exiled from your place in going into the unknown is like, okay, you're done. So,
well, yeah, it comes back to that whole Zeus's law of like, you treat the visitor, the guest, with hospitality, and so he's still beholden to that, and that's the law that ultimately Odysseus breaks. But that's sort of the law of the land. That's what keeps us functioning as a society. And I should just kick these guys out, but then that's a violation that there's no coming back from. So he's sort of the example of, this is the complexity of holding fast to this. And Odysseus is an example of, well, if you dare to break it, this is the chaos that can, spew out from that.
Yeah. But if you're there for 3 years, are you still a visitor?
If you're never, that's kind of the point. They're never actually really welcomed in. They're a visitor until they're welcomed in. They just sort of start squatting there.
Yeah, they're kind of there. And then I guess there's also part of it where I view Telemachus as a kid from Succession, because I think his reign would last like maybe a day, and then he'll get taken over and killed. Because even in his plan that he thought through, Penelope lets him know, look, even if I marry someone, what do you think happens next? You're dead, and then we're gonna live on this other thing. Your plan has an immediate hole in it right off, and then on top of that, it's like, well, this Zeus's law thing. And so this is my thought, is like, so he is in charge of, or they are in charge of, the castle. And when Odysseus was there, he also was in charge of the castle. This law existed, and everybody didn't just come and squat, right? Because the castle is always going to be better than where everybody else was living anyway. And so if there was some way to get other people out, there must have been some way to do that without being exiled or whatever. And he didn't even have the, if you're not going to be tough and battle hardened or anything like that, at least be smart. And he wasn't at least even smart enough to figure out, well, how do you get these people out of your house? Because there has to be a way. Otherwise, people would all just move to the best house.
But I think I think the way the story is architected, they're only there because they're waiting for Penelope to choose her next hand. And that's the difference. When Odysseus was there, they weren't waiting on Penelope to choose anything. They couldn't go into the house because there was nothing to wait for. There is a cultural process for choosing from the suitors the next hand of the queen, and I think that's what's missing.
And the suitors have to live in your house.
Well, they're just bringing. I like it because it's a party where they all bring their own food, right? They actually say they're going to bring us all pigs and gifts and stuff to eat. So they kind of take care of themselves. They just do it in her banquet hall. When you look at the women of the movie, and we have Penelope and Calypso and Circe, and the Lupita Nyong'o's dual role as Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra, I think Penelope is a really interesting one, and obviously Anne Hathaway is fantastic. I would love to walk through the other women of the movie and look at how Nolan has sort of updated them because, and frankly, Steve, I'll lean on you a little bit because I don't remember my memory of Calypso and Circe and the sirens and Helen was that they weren't as maybe rich. Like these roles were meant for good, strong actresses to play in a way that I don't think an originalist adaptation would have done.
No, I mean, if everything with Circe, it's Samantha Morton. The story is they eat, she turns them into pigs, she's a witch or whatever. But how Nolan took that, it was the most horrifying, gruesome moment. And then even the commentary of when she's turning them back, basically saying, "Oh, okay, put your disguise back on.
Go back to your disguise, right?
Go back to your disguise." It's just, it's not just the, kid's story of like, "Oh, don't go into somebody's house and yell their stuff and act like a pig or you're turned into one." It's you. That's who these guys are, and that just was amazing way to recontextualize that scene sort of for contemporary to give us something horrifying and to also just speak to inner nature of people, versus just the kid story of, oh, there's magic people that can turn you into animals. Was, I think, a true standout for me in one of the sequences in the film.
And if I remember from the text, this Calypso is much richer and is like, I helped you when you needed help, and now it's time to start slowly bringing you back. I don't remember that from the text. Calypso just wants him to stay there. Other gods have to intervene and be like, look, lady, enough with the lotus flower. He's got to get going. And so that makes her really nice. She becomes like a therapist in a way, which really makes that a fascinating, because it is him arguing with himself. And she lets him do that. I mean, she sedates him and then slowly brings him back to remember. And that made it really so much of a richer character. That was really cool.
Okay, so I guess I should talk about Helen. Because... So when it comes to the Helen thing, I thought was interesting in two ways. One, I will admit, part of my first ignorance was I was like, oh, Menelaus got her back. Didn't know. So and then when she goes back in the little scene about, oh, I'm so sorry for everything I did, okay, whatever. So when it comes to Helen, there was the scene of it, the scene of Helen, and to a lesser degree since the same actress that's with the twin sister, was, I thought it was well done. It was interesting. It was a little bit of revelation to me that she was back, but at the same time, I do get and understand that making Helen black kind of does change a lot, about that, because especially at that time period, even Greeks then, or Greeks in that time period, would have been either closer to olive skinned or lighter, and the ultimate their vision of beauty was pale, because women were inside, men were outside. If you were outside all the time, you were poor. If you were beautiful and being captured, you were inside, so you'd be very pale. So to have that be that, because the literary, while the Trojan War, I still think, is more about just power of the Aegean, the literary device and the romanticism of it is, this is the face that launched 1,000 ships, and it was all about this woman. And so to have her be essentially an African woman instead of someone that we've been from, even just someone from Greece, because I understand the backlash of that, and it did take me back a second because I was like, well, first off, I mean, she is beautiful, so I was like, yeah, that would work for me, right? And so you can kind of do.
Yeah, I got 1,000 ships in my backyard.
Exactly. Yeah. I was like, I get it. I could destroy a city for you. That's fine. And I get that part. And there's the overarching literary impact of it as a holistic thing. Like she's so beautiful that all of this stuff happened. But then there's also the other part of it where, okay, well, if I tilt my head slightly, I can make this work, because really we're only talking about the taste of two dudes, right? Maybe Menelaus and Paris like darker women. Right. So then that was it, because it wasn't like everybody wanted her, but I mean, in the stories, in the mythos, she's so beautiful that they don't stone her and all this other stuff. And so maybe it is that. But making her what would not have been considered a stereotypical beauty, even in Greece at that time, it is the thing of where I can see where people could have had slight either issues or problems with it or been weird. I honestly, looking at the whole thing, think that the whole movie would have worked better if Zendaya and Lupita had switched roles, because Zendaya's look makes more sense. So, like, for her to look like Zendaya would have made more sense. Because that's what she would have been closer to.
I wonder if that's true, because I think when you look at the casting of Lupita Nyong'o, who is, objectively in the women characters in this movie, the most exotic thing on screen. Like, she looks the most different than any of the other characters on screen. I actually think her casting is wonderful, specifically in that regard, because she doesn't look like anything else that they have seen, right? This is, oh my God, right. She's from a place that's very far away. We don't even know how to get there. We would have to go through like giant squids and more, whirlpools of death to find out where she came from. And so we're going to protect her, and she's going to be the thing that launches 1,000 ships, because she is so different. I think that's to me that worked really well.
I get that, but I don't think of the 13th century BC as a place that embraces diversity, right? Like they kind of have the same, So there's a piece of it where, don't get me wrong, I'm on board with, and I like everything that everything you're saying with this, and I think that having her in it was a great bold choice, and I loved it. But at the same time, I understand how this is such a departure of what you would think of as what you, especially in that role, what you think of as the stereotypical beauty that would do all of this. To have such a departure from it, I get that, and because Helen's primary attribute is just how she looks, right? It's not like she does or says anything dramatic or profound or anything else like that. And so then to have it be such a departure of what you would think of as a stereotypical beauty at time, that you could have put Lupita Nyong'o in any of the other female roles and it would have worked fine. You could have switched her and Charlize Theron, right? That might have worked too. You could have switched them, right? Then because Charlize Theron looks more like what you would expect the person cast as Helen of Troy to look like. And while and I guess I'm kind of trying to make sure I'm communicating effectively and kind of peddling both sides of the fence. I like that. I thought it was kind of cool that it was done that way, but I understand why that would be, jarring or off-putting for some people. That it would be, that you'd have you do such a departure from what you would expect that character to be.
Well, and isn't that a Nolan-esque thumbprint in terms of his efforts to modernize the story? Like in the original story, there was no indication that she was any other race than Greek, Spartan, whatever, right? She was a princess of the people who just happened to be super beautiful and then eloped and started a war. I actually think this choice modernizes the story in a really interesting way. So I totally see your point, and I see your point also that Lupita Nyong'o could have played an incredibly effective Calypso. Okay, so on the other side of it, we have Clytemnestra. We don't get a lot of Clytemnestra.
No, doesn't she just kill Agamemnon and then moves on?
Yeah,
because Agamemnon killed her baby, which I was like, justified. Yeah. So,
yeah,
okay.
The best Clytemnestra was in Montage. That's what we're saying. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think that works so well because of of what we do see of Agamemnon. We don't see his face ever. We just see, little bits of it through the mask and a lot of just black, dark, ominous presence. So yeah, feels completely justified of like, dude, you were the source of so much pain for so many people. You had this coming to you.
But he is so cool.
He's got
I
that
mean,
dope
the
helmet.
everything about that, like the armor was cool. The way he walked was cool. His massive presence over everyone. He's not only the king of kings in by title, but just by the sheer size and the dominance of him. And then also the aura forming he was doing when when they opened the gates of Troy, because they opened the gates of Troy. They had the scene. He's just standing there. He didn't even say anything. He didn't even have to say attack or nothing. He's just standing there like, take a look at me, and then they go and kill Troy. You know,
all right, fellas, let's go.
But he didn't have to say a word. He was just standing there, and like they knew. Hang on a second, the king needs a moment.
Yeah,
all right, now. So, he was such a cool character. The way they built him all around.
So Agamemnon is played by Benny Safdie. Is that
really?
weird stunt casting?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know, because I was like, because I kept wondering when we get to him back home and all of that we're continuously shooting around his face. We don't see his face. I thought that was an interesting choice, and then was like, okay, I wonder who that is. And then Benny Safdie. I was like, well, okay, it doesn't really matter, because if we'd seen his face, I don't know that would have changed anything for me, but I think not showing the face did just contribute to sort of the aura and mystery of Agamemnon is just this larger than life person. But then why Benny Safdie? Why it could have been anybody really of a certain size.
They worked together in Oppenheimer, maybe.
Yeah,
they just had a shorthand or something.
Yeah,
I had no idea that it was him. That does seem like a funny choice. But he did it great. His physicality was perfect.
Super physical. I think the other one that stands out to me that I want to make sure we have a specific shout out to is, I think, one of the underappreciated, wonderful British character actors that we first discovered in Yesterday, the Beatles movie where the Beatles disappeared and Himesh Patel got to sing all the Beatles music. That guy is fantastic, and it was a huge surprise to see him in such a significant role as Eurylochus in this movie. I adore Himesh Patel, and I just relish whenever he shows up. He's great. So any other, this is a Murderers Row cast. I mean, Nolan got anybody he wanted, pretty much. Anybody else you want to shout out around? We've talked about Matt Damon. We haven't talked probably enough about Matt Damon. Samantha Morton, Bill Irwin as Polyphemus, Elliot Page in a small but central role in this thing. John Bernthal, obviously, as Menelaus. John Leguizamo as the elderly swineherd, the blind swineherd Emmaus, and Mia Goth and Logan Marshall Green. Who else do you want to shout out specific praise for? Oh, Travis Scott. There.
Yeah,
as the bard.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, no, I like that form of storytelling from the bard. You kind of mentioned the actors that I would have mentioned. So that I liked how they wrote. The Menelaus scenes. I liked how they wrote what that was, and how that Menelaus, as opposed to being just some either vengeful or raging or crazy person that's jealous about his wife being stolen, actually had a lot of the way that character was written with more depth, and also the way it was done about how they the acting of it, like as far as little acting things that I just kind of liked was that they were basically with a pheasant hunting, because in my head I picture guys like nowadays you do that with clay pigeons. And like basically they were just shooting a couple guys, just shooting with a bow and arrow, killing some pheasants, and talking about matters of state and history, and where he really fleshing out and learning where he's whatever is learning about his where he's learning about his father and everything like that, and that scene and that set of acting, and then even the way he was his interaction with Helen and everything, I thought that was something that you could. There are so many ways that could have gone very wrong, not only in terms of how it was written, but the way it was, the way you would act that and present that to try to make that be a believable thing of like, yeah, we had this thing, we did this brutal stuff, we moved on. Then, he's kind of more well adjusted about the war than most everybody else. And I found that dichotomy to be interesting, where to him, it was just like, yeah, we had to do this thing. It was rough. It was horrible. We came back, we did it. We're good. And now let's hunt some pheasants. So yeah, so I just like the way the way that was done, and I see so many ways that would be done poorly.
Can we transition to the score?
Oh my gosh!
What
Yes.
is happening
Yeah.
with the score? It's
I saw this
amazing.
in RPX, which is Regal Regal Premium
Yes,
Experience. And one of the things is it's not a full IMAX screen, but it is much bigger, but they've really poured a lot of stuff into the sound. There's speakers all over the place, and they have what the slang is called butt kickers, where your seat is connected to bass. So anytime there's any kind of low notes or thunder or bass, your seat rumbles, which means I spent 2 hours and 45 minutes going like this because that score is relentless. Yes. It is relentless and so intense, and I never got numb to it. It would build, and then it would find a way to build still and then build again. He did that Nolan thing where he'll take something from the real world of the story and put it in the score. And for this, it was the clanging, it was the alarm that they were sending from Troy. That's the plang, plang, plang that you're hearing, and my seat's going all over the place. But it was, I mean, it could have been so deafeningly dumb and numb after a while. And instead, it never stopped building. It was incredible. I thought it was breathtaking. And I have preferred this sound mix to a lot of his other sound mixes. There wasn't like an important conversation that happens on a catamaran. Like this Christopher Nolan doesn't hate dialogue as much as some other Christopher Nolan.
You might think he's actually kind of proud of it. I could hear everything in a way that felt, he likes his words here. He apparently banned an orchestra for this movie, which was a deeply clean break from Tenet and Oppenheimer. Ludwig Göransson again reconstructed a whole bunch of Bronze Age instruments, the aulos and the lyre, and he's got 35 bronze gongs. Recorded himself, as you say, hitting scrap metal and air conditioner units. And we've got James Blake on chant vocals with Travis Scott as the bard. The chant vocals are haunting. Listen to the Troy track on the soundtrack, and you will get a feel of that. But, best sound system you've got kind of thing, because it is incredibly layered and textured and it really incredible work. And I think that goes to a lot of what people are talking about the movie, that so many people who are in and around this movie are doing the work of their careers in this movie. Tom Holland, Matt Damon, Christopher Nolan, Ludwig Göransson, Hoyte van Hoytema. This thing was 100% IMAX 70 millimeter. They built the new camera with IMAX, the IMAX Keeley, which is the first LCD telemetry on large format film. Camera is also in a giant 400-pound vault to silence it on set so they could actually capture the dialogue sequences. 2, it's the first anamorphic IMAX ever. There's just a lot of first evers on this, including, and I can't quite understand this because I haven't seen it in a behind the scenes, a mirror periscope so that Damon and Hathaway could have eye contact around the giant camera because it was so close to them, but when it was so close, they couldn't actually see each other. Does it make sense?
It's like a new version of. It's like a new version of the Interrotron.
Yeah.
Errol Morris's. Yeah, it's a way of making it as intimate as it can be for the people talking, even though there's no intimacy there. They can't see each other.
Right. Because if Anne Hathaway's supposed to be engaged with Matt Damon, so Matt Damon's going to look at Anne Hathaway, but because of the blimp, as they call it around the IMAX camera, she is so far off to the side that if he's making eye contact with her, camera's getting him in profile practically. So it was that idea where he could be engaged with the camera and whoever he has the scene with, and so the mirror construct allows them to do that, because the photos I've seen because the IMAX cameras are big and then they just encase it in this huge thing that is ginormous. It looks like the old Technicolor rigs from the 50s where they were shooting 3 colors of film stock or whatever at the same time and all that. Yeah, it's ridiculous. You should check out, see if you could. There's footage out there of them hauling this thing around set and everything. It's It's insane.
And then to go to like the top of a mountain. Yeah.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
all this stuff. Every grip must have been like, this is my last day.
I just remember the footage of
First day, last day.
Dunkirk, seeing Hoyte van Hoytema carrying the IMAX camera on his shoulders for that one in the water, like in the ocean. And I figure if there's one guy who could probably carry that whole thing on this movie, it's got to be him. The guy's a madman. It is right now biggest Matt Damon opening ever. It's the largest R-rated debut in Universal history. It's currently tracking at 120 million domestic, 257 million worldwide opening. This is Nolan's biggest global opening ever, currently tracking to top Oppenheimer. And yet it feels a little slow. And I wonder what you guys think about this. So much of the press has been, see this on the biggest thing you can see. But there aren't that many of the biggest things you can see, like the IMAX 70 millimeter pristine thing. It's not everywhere. Yeah. And I wonder how many people tried to buy tickets for opening weekend in the biggest theater they have and couldn't, so they just pushed it out. So I wonder if that's going to be a drag on opening weekend even, and we'll see this thing have longer legs even, over the course of the month.
Yeah. I got so lucky because opening weekend tickets went on sale last July 2025. Tickets went on sale for the IMAX, and I missed the announcement by a day or two. And then it was like they had like the evening shows, like 2 on Friday, and they were sold out. And I was like, okay.
Oh, last July.
Yeah,
a year ago. A year ago.
Yeah.
This is the first time they've gone that far in advance.
I didn't understand the full ramifications of that.
Early June, I just went and checked to see if there was anything on Friday. And at 11:30 show, there was one seat that opened up near the back of the theater. I'm like, mine. And I'm looking, and in that IMAX theater, it's like sold out, or just front 2 rows. When I got to the theater about 15, 20 minutes before showtime, I walk into the lobby, and it's just wall-to-wall people lined up for popcorn. It was like all the Nolan bros just showed up. And I have a friend that's a huge, Homer fan, and he's like, oh, I should go see it. I'm like, well, you're probably gonna have to get tickets for mid-August, maybe, if they're available, because in that format, people are just buying every single seat they can. And I'm hoping it's continuing in the other large theater experiences, because what I saw, this thing should be, I'm surprised that the numbers aren't bigger, because what I'm seeing is just people, this is a must-see experience for them.
Yeah.
At least here in Phoenix at that theater.
Reportedly, the production plus prints and advertising, the break even is around $625 million. This movie has to do to break even.
Okay.
It's off to a hell of a start this weekend, but that's just a big number.
Yeah. And thinking of that made me question or think about a thing that I had a point that I thought was semi-profound, but now I think may be wrong, or maybe I have an argument with it. Is Christopher Nolan in the specific, and then maybe James Cameron, the only directors that could get a studio to greenlight something like this, where you have like a $250 million movie that is not about a superhero? Yeah. Well, that isn't about a superhero, right? And then I stopped and thought about it, and I was like, well, is Odysseus a superhero? Because
he will be now. He'll be all over the lunchbox set.
So,
yeah.
Well, yeah, but that isn't that, and that it was an interesting, at least to me, I thought about an interesting thing about, there's several reasons for the shifting of how movies are made and what movies are and everything, but there is a place for this where there used to be back in the olden days, it was only $100 million, but the $100 million, or $150 million, or modern $250 million movie that wasn't IP, that was like, hey, we're just going to take a swing at this thing and we're going to do this thing, right? And that a lot of times with that, of course, it is the track record of the directors or whoever's making it is able to get that greenlit. And that, are we at a point now where Christopher Nolan and then I guess James Cameron, like, are they the last two of the directors now that could get something like this made?
It's getting that way because everything's broken.
Yes. Everything's broken. And there was a wonderful interview with Christopher Nolan and Jon Stewart on The Daily Show. And he actually Nolan actually said, this was not a foregone conclusion. I've wanted to make this for a very long time, and it was hard work to get. Nobody was easily convinced that this was going to be a worthy story. So I don't even know if Nolan is a guy who, certainly he doesn't necessarily feel confident that anything he wants to throw at a screen he'll get made.
No, he said that was because of Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer basically allowed him to do this. And if Oppenheimer had not been what it was, if it had been a typical Nolan, and done pretty well and all that, I don't think we would have had this film. But because Oppenheimer became that film that summer that it was, he had to take his shot with this one. That this was the one time he was going to get a chance.
He did say
which is a shame,
huge shame. He did say that the Trojan Horse sequence, he was originally on board for working on Troy, and he had conceived of this Trojan Horse sequence back then, and it's been in his head since Troy.
Wow!
And now he finally got a chance to make it.
Yeah, I don't know that it would have worked in Troy.
I know. It was reconceived
it's
for
weird,
sure.
Because it's weird to have it be a horse in a I don't know what that name of that position is, but with the hooves up, versus just the regular horse with 4 feet. So that would make it easier to move around. Like what they, and even what it took for all the hundreds of Trojans to move that horse. And that the scene was great. It was amazing. It was an imagination of that Trojan horse scene that I'd never thought of getting it that way.
There is a horse, a wild Bronco, a blue Bronco with red eyes that sits out in front of the Denver International Airport. It is a haunting and horrifying thing, and I'm never going to drive past it again without imagining how many people are dead inside.
You just have to get out and stab it a couple times.
Well, yeah, but what if someone in there wipes the blood off when the blade comes back?
Right, you
don't
know.
Smart.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Believe me, I imagine a lot of locals have wanted to, if not already tried, to stab that horrifying thing.
I want to give a shout out to the editing. It's the same editor I know as at least Oppenheimer, and she has this incredible shorthand of visual language where you're not watching people like walk all the way across a room. You see someone start, and then they're sort of in the middle, and then they're at the end. They cut out all of the fat, but with the visual language makes your head put it all together so it feels seamless. Like there are literal jump cuts between Matt and Calypso in this, and it feels fine. It feels just like this dreamy kind of situation. So I mean, I can't imagine how much footage is on the cutting room floor, but it feels seamless. But it's just this wonderful, it's not shaky, it's not overly frenetic. You don't get the feeling that they're cutting around something they didn't get. They're just taking out the fat. You don't need to see someone open the door by showing the doorknob turn. Just get them in there. And I thought the editing was flawless.
Much
absolutely
effortless
beautiful.
Audio leading too, right? Like sentences that are connected across jump cuts that make you think this is okay. I'm totally in this conversation. I thought that worked really, really well. That's a great point. And we didn't say, but every bit of promo that these guys are doing, they say this one bit of trivia that they have to change IMAX reels every 180 seconds. They get 3 minutes of dialogue.
What?
And then they have to change. There's 2 million feet were shot for this movie, and they had to stop every 3 minutes. So they're in the middle of those Anne Hathaway, Matt Damon, like real drama sequences. And when he yells cut, it's everybody freeze. Keep that energy while we change reels. Crazy.
Oh my God.
Crazy. So, Ocean. Last point.
Why don't they just have multiple? Yeah, I'm
cameras are I think just budget. I think their cameras, there only exists, one camera or, right?
Oh, okay.
So,
Wow.
Well, they'd also say this was the first time Nolan hasn't destroyed one of the IMAX cameras during production, because they cost $500,000 for one of those, and he said he got through this one without breaking any.
And it came in under budget and 9 days early. This is a 91-day shoot. Think about that, right?
I have a feeling his next movie is going to be shot exclusively on iPhone.
All right, now's the time we rank it. Letterboxd.com. That's where you can find our HQ page, where you can find the reviews of all the films that we've talked about across the Next Reel family of film shows. As you know, it's 5 stars and hearts if you really, really, really love it. Ocean, you first. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna end up going 5 stars and a heart.
Wow.
I don't know that I don't have any legitimate problem with the movie. And all of my problems with it are just either baked into the story or characters I don't like or something like that, which is like, well, that's how I should react. And so the fact that yes, you can give me a 3-hour movie, and I did not get up to go to the restroom one time, and I just said I'm gonna hang in here, and I stayed with it, and it was exactly, and I could not say it anywhere near as good as Tommy did about it. How it was long but didn't feel it. The acting was great, the story was great, the sound, the score, everything. There's just nothing about this movie that I can pick apart that and say, oh well, this part of it sucked, but everything else was good. No, this is 5 stars on heart.
Okay, all right, Tom. What are you gonna do?
I also didn't use the restroom, but my seat was vibrating so much. There's a chance I did go to the restroom and didn't know. There's one thing that stuck out to me, and it's so small and dumb that I almost don't care. But I wish that Tom Holland would have just said mother and father, not mom and dad. That's the only thing that tripped me up. I'm not saying like because of the history. It just feels weird. Mom, there's gods outside. That being said, I thought this was an absolute masterwork. I think it's extraordinary. It's so exciting, and it really makes the film making and the film going experience so wonderful. I'm giving it 5 stars and a heart.
Out of the gate. All right, Steve, what are you going to do? You can't give it 5 stars because you have your own rule.
Right. I do have my social studies teachers across this country can't wait for this thing to come out on DVD so they can pop that in and have a whole week of just like, hey kids, just watch this. Here we go. We're going to talk about ancient Greece. Here you go. Just watch this. It's all good. No, I do have my own rule. So it's going to be at a 4.5 because it is an impeccable film. But yeah, I rarely give out 5 stars. It's got to have some deep emotional something to it that usually doesn't come out on the first viewing. So we'll see. But I was really moved with this, with, Odysseus's journey, his whole revelation about, and we didn't even get into this, about Athena being the goddess of wisdom and what that looks like for him, right. And that sort of dual casting in that part and what that means of like his realization, his coming to or accessing that wisdom and knowledge. There was a really powerful moment that I'm looking forward to going on this journey again. May venture out into theaters to see this one more time on a big screen of any size that I can find. But definitely 4.5 stars and a big old heart.
So what I'm hearing is that there was no emotional pull to you that Odysseus destroyed the Bronze Age. Like you were just like,
no, it's usually a
broke civilization. You're like, yeah, seen it.
No, it's usually a personal thing that'll push it up to 5 stars. But
I've seen Steve throw a dog onto a dung heap. Yeah. He's a hard nut to crack.
Okay, all right.
I feel like I went into this movie expecting not to have connected with the story, but to really connect with the filmmaking and the experience, and that was certainly true. But even this conversation has amped my appreciation for the story writ large. And I've got the audiobook on my downloaded on Libby. I'm going to go through the audiobook. We didn't talk about the change of the ending from the book, which I think is an important change that Nolan gives us that will change the way history remembers this story. And maybe that's worth a kind of a conversation. But I'm still on board with the 5 star and a heart team. And that means it averages up to 5 stars and a heart, which also means that we line up with the Rotten Tomatoes. This is kind of a rare alignment where the critics and the audience agree this is an A movie. I mean, critics are 98%, audience is 96%. People dig this movie opening weekend. So glad to be on board. Worth seeing, biggest screen you can get. And I just had a brainstorm. I think we should do a post-credit scene of this podcast, because there's something else we need to talk about. I forgot to talk about it, so we're going to do it right after the credits roll. So don't stand up and throw your trash away and go to the bathroom after the music. There might be more, but it'll be a surprise. Anyway, thank you all so much for downloading and listening to this show. We appreciate your time and your attention. If this conversation sent you down a rabbit hole or reminded you of other films circling the same ideas, we do a lot of that work across the next reel of film shows, where we dig into films and filmmakers that built the language this movie is speaking. You can find everything we do as part of the Next Reel family at thenextreel.com. And if this is your first time here because of this movie, stick around. We only do this once a month, and we're picky on purpose. Next month, Spider-Man, brand new day. Meeting adjourned. Outstanding. Here's my post-credit sequence. You guys, I can't believe we didn't talk more about this. I think it is important that we note that the gods that are mythical to us in 2026 are mythical to Odysseus in the Bronze Age. Is that an interesting thing to you guys? That the fact that we got Athena as a vision was his personal relationship with a god. She does not exist. And in the original telling of this story, at the end of the story, Zeus and Athena personified walk into the banquet hall and wipe everybody's memories and go about their business because they're real tangible things. And Nolan has ripped that away in this telling of the story. The gods do not exist beyond a personal relationship with them. And I found that interesting. Did it strike any of you that way?
I think it's a little ambiguous of whether, I mean, because there's so much time spent saying about Zeus's law that treats someone nicely because they might be a god in disguise. I think it's a little ambiguous of, is Athena, was that Athena? Was Athena, was that a god when you see that Zendaya is beheaded in the castle, there's a chance that he just took that as personal trauma and is talking to her in his head, or that she really was a god and this film isn't godless.
Okay.
Because there's no other gods.
I did not take it that way. I didn't take it that way. I thought it was.
I don't either.
Okay.
But I like that it's ambiguous.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I thought that there were the gods, because he goes and talks to dead people. Right, he talks to all these dead soldiers. They run from him. That the prophet that comes out of Hades and everything. I see what you're saying. So they're not, because right.
They're
Hades
still supernatural.
Hades
like the Cyclops isn't a god,
but
the Cyclops talks to Poseidon. So the Cyclops, that's why they think that he's the brother of.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that because Troy is my benchmark for making these type of movies with no supernatural elements, to me this felt more like, I felt more supernatural. But you're right, there were not any gods. Because like Calypso isn't a god, she's like a nymph or something.
She's just another species, right? Like this movie is very species forward. The sirens are like sirens / manatees. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. Not like, because my experience with stories of this age are like Clash of the Titans, right, where they're literal gods sitting around a table discussing the fates of man. And I thought this, using the gods as a vehicle for Odysseus to rebuild his relationship of self, right? To understand his own guilt and process his life's experiences, was really touching in a way I did not expect in this movie. I like the way you say this movie is not godless. Maybe it's God adjacent, but it's not godful.
Right.
Well, yeah,
it is for the characters.
Yeah.
Like the characters believe in them, and that's enough.
Yeah. The characters believe in them, and they see fantastic things, and I think it is akin to a relationship that people would have with the god now, where it's like, unless no one at least as far as I know, no one's saying he's like, okay, I now see a physical God and everything. But there are people that people believe in him, and some people don't. And I think that this was allowing for a diversity of belief. But also that they even intimate that when they kill Simon, right? That they're saying, oh well, they believe in the same gods we believe in. They assume that they would believe in different gods. So.
That's a good point, because the movie is far from atheistic, right? The movie has a rich tapestry of belief, but it is as inconsistently consistent as modern tapestries of belief. I thought that was really special.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Way to go, Nolan.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then we did touch on it, but if you want to call it a twist, it's not really a twist like a Shyamalan twist, but he always has a big turn that happens sort of at the very end, and the idea of Penelope saying, "We are the people from the sea." What's devastating. And they give you so many, you kind of already knew it, but you weren't putting it in that language, and then the entire movie just clicks into place. We are the monsters at the end of the book, it turns out, as we go through and we're like burning villages because they won't help us, and we're worried about people from the sea. No, you idiot, we're the Greeks. As we burn down your village, and we're going to go back into the sea. It's all right there, but it doesn't click until he gives that speech without looking at Penelope. It's
and we should say that the end of Steve, check me. What is the end of the original poem? Because he does the same thing, right?
Geez.
He has the conversation in Hades, I guess. Is it in Hades, where he tells him, "You're gonna have to go to the West. At the end of your story, you have to go pay homage to the dead." And then at the end of
It's been so long, I don't recall the end of the poem.
My understanding is at the end he gets home and he stays home.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And here he gets home and then gets back on a boat and goes to the West. And that is low-key the kind of ending I think I needed from the story. And he gets to do it with his wife, and his son becomes the king, and that is like the weirdest, darkest, happy ending that I think we could have expected. It feels very Nolan, and it was worth it for me.
Oh, absolutely.
End post-credits sequence.
Ah.